I've always been a firm believer that Wales should not be independent, but over the past couple of years, I think especially because of Brexit, it's kind of made me realise maybe we should be independent.
The marches for independence have been great so far, and overall, yes, Cymru, in my opinion, is great. I just worry there is this sometimes infiltrationist going on where certain groups are trying to make Yes Cymru only about their own personal views and try to exclude other people based on their own viewpoints, and that's just something I disagree with. But I think the Yes Cymru have taken a good step on insinuating that they're non-partisan and they do not take any official side on issues like the EU, etc.
The Welsh Assembly isn't perfect, but I would rather have it than have direct rule from Westminster for sure. I think the Welsh Assembly is it's needed because Wales is a country in its own right, and to strip that away I think would just be madness. I don't understand the mindset of people that want to remove the Welsh Assembly. I think it's definitely it's a big case of Stockholm Syndrome.
I would consider myself very patriotic indeed. I don't believe there's anything wrong with being proud of where you come from. I don't think there's anything wrong with being pro self-determination and being pro your own culture and heritage. Loads of people see that as an inherently bad thing these days, but as long as it doesn't rely on believing you're superior to others or your culture is better than others, just want to be equal and wanting to share and invite others to be part of your culture and heritage, and I would consider myself very patriotic in that respect.
I think people judge Welsh people quite a lot, and I don't think they expect a lot from Welsh people, and that kind of annoys me quite a bit actually, because we kind of have this thing in Wales where if you want to be successful you can't live in Wales and do that, and we've seen time and time again that you kind of have maybe a student that will study outside of Wales and they will get a job and move to England.
We were a rich nation whose people were condemned to live in poverty. Pretty much everything of any value that you could dig up from the ground was dug up once you're in Wales. But apart from those few square miles of civic pride up the road, none of those profits were ploughed back into our country.
I know about Truro and obviously the town that was flooded, so that Liverpool could have a reservoir. Obviously that's shocking treatment, and it's kind of symbolic of how England has kind of stepped over Wales for a long time, and particularly Westminster. I think one of the stark things as well obviously was Thatcher taking away the mines and how that's economically impacted Wales, and also how a lot of small towns, a lot of towns in Wales are kind of allowed to rot. And then I'm actually in London right now. I'm in an area called Uxbridge, and even the worse off areas are leagues ahead of the even average kind of towns in South Wales and stuff like that. So I feel like Wales has kind of been used as like a desperate workforce for the English establishment, and has just been undervalued and undertreated for such a long time now. Actually,
this current lockdown has really shaped the way that I've seen. It's really shaped the way that I've kind of viewed Wales and how much power it can actually have. So, for example, Mark Drakeford doing his own announcements and making his own rules about lockdown that differs from England's lockdown. And as we can see, actually, our lockdowns have created better results than in England. So we have less deaths, we have less cases a lot of the time.
I was already pro-independence even before the lockdown, but I believe that Wales's lockdown approach, where we've had significantly less deaths and cases in it compared to England, has just shown us what Wales can do when it takes its choice into its own hands and says, no, we're doing our own thing. So yeah, I believe that lockdown has only strengthened the case for independent Wales, and I believe it's also been the opportunity to show Welsh people how much better we can do things when we're doing it for ourselves, not relying on Westminster and the Conservatives to do it for us.
It is this generation that will be able to say, we got there because we marched, united in our goal, ignited in our passion, all under one banner, in our hearts and in our minds, already free.
I think the only way for Wales to go now is independent, especially with the Conservatives having an outright majority. Like Scotland, Ireland, Wales did not vote for the Conservatives because England is the biggest country out of all of those countries by some massive margin. It kind of, in the elections, it kind of doesn't matter how the Celtic nations vote, because at the end of the day, if England wants it, they'll get it. If England want the Conservatives, we'll all have the Conservatives. So I think it's a very unequal union, a very oppressive union that we need to get out of.
A lot of Swansea was bombed during the Second World War, and you can still see the buildings that have been bombed even today. And it's not something that is left there because it's historic. It's actually just left there because we can't afford to do anything with the buildings and make things look a lot nicer in Swansea.
I definitely do believe that Wales should be independent. I believe that we've been part of the United Kingdom now for almost 800 years, and during that time we were one of the biggest global exporters of coal. We were rich in resources and made billions, which was then just taken from the Welsh valleys, and we didn't see much of it return to us. And now some places in Wales are still left in the 80s or early 90s. We're like 30 years behind compared to like London and other cities. So I believe that independence is the right course of action for Wales, because it gives us this opportunity to create a new nation. It gives us the opportunity to take our destiny into our own control, because we've had almost our entire political economic policies dominated by Westminster, who is now currently cutting the numbers of Welsh MPs. So we're seeing that the Welsh voices in the United Kingdom are just becoming more and more extinguished.
But like, British establishment media coverage on independence is obviously and unsurprisingly shocking and very biased as well. I remember seeing a BBC article where it said that 11% of Welsh people supported independence, while 14% supported abolishing the Assembly, which is absolute nonsense, because all of the opinion polls I've seen recently have had Welsh independence favouring in between like 33 to 39%, so I don't know where they're getting the 14% from, unless they're interviewing like a bunch of elderly men at a working man's pub or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, the media coverage has always been pretty swayed.
Obviously, Welsh is the language of Wales, but in the 19th century, I think, we were forced not to speak Welsh anymore, which is why the majority of people today in Wales speak English. So people were given the Welsh knot. So if you spoke Welsh, you'd have the Welsh knot around you, and you were sort of made fun of for speaking Welsh, because that was seen as a really bad thing to do, because they wanted to suppress Welsh identity and the Welsh language.
This march today, and it's a hell of a march, but it's also more than just a march, it's a milestone on the path to freedom. We're a nation long belittled that started to believe. The clouds of inferiority are evaporating from the skies of our ambition. Wales is waking, rising, rejecting second-class status to claim our place as an equal among the nations of Europe and the rest of the world.